The lawyer's voice seemed to echo through the mahogany-paneled office as Meredith Clark sat frozen in the leather chair, staring at the thick stack of papers that had just shattered her understanding of everything. Her uncle hadn't just left her money or some sentimental keepsake. He had left her half of Donovan Luxury Hotels, a multi-billion-dollar empire spanning 32 properties across 4 continents, and the catch made her stomach drop like she had missed the last step on a staircase. "I am sorry. Could you repeat that?" Meredith asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The lawyer, a gray-haired man with wire-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat. "Your uncle's will states that you inherit 50% ownership of Donovan Luxury Hotels, but there is a stipulation. You must work alongside the current CEO, Jason Donovan, for a minimum of 1 year before you can make any decisions regarding your shares. During that time, you will hold equal decision-making power with Mr. Donovan on all company matters." Jason Donovan. Her uncle's business partner and the man who had built this empire alongside him. She had met him exactly twice, both times at family gatherings where he had been polite but distant, his attention always pulled toward his phone or some urgent business matter. He was 31, only 4 years older than she was, but he carried himself like someone who had been born wearing a suit. "Where is Mr. Donovan now?" she asked. "He is aware of the reading of the will," the lawyer said carefully. "He chose not to attend. Of course he did." Meredith felt a flash of anger cut through her shock. Her Uncle Richard had been more than family to her. When her parents died in a car accident when she was 19, he had been the one to help her through college, to encourage her dreams of becoming a chef, to show up at every restaurant opening she had worked at, no matter how small. And now this man, who had supposedly been his closest friend and partner, could not even be bothered to show up. She signed the papers with shaking hands, barely processing the lawyer's additional explanations about transition meetings and legal procedures. Her phone buzzed as she walked out of the office into the bright morning sunlight of Manhattan. The text was from an unknown number, "My office. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. Don't be late. JD, no condolences. No acknowledgement of her loss, just a command." Meredith felt her jaw tighten as she shoved her phone back into her purse. She had spent the last 6 years working her way up from prep cook to sous chef at one of the most demanding restaurants in the city. She knew how to handle difficult bosses and high-pressure situations. But something told her Jason Donovan was going to be in a category all his own. The Donovan Luxury Hotel's headquarters occupied the top 15 floors of a gleaming skyscraper in Midtown. Meredith arrived at 7:45 the next morning, dressed in the most professional outfit she owned, a charcoal gray suit she had bought for a business loan meeting that had never happened. The receptionist directed her to the 52nd floor with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Jason's assistant, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an efficient manner, led her through a maze of glass-walled offices. "He is on a call," she said. "He will be with you shortly." Shortly turned into 20 minutes. Meredith sat in the waiting area, watching employees hurry past with tablets and coffee cups, their conversations a blur of occupancy rates and revenue projections and guest satisfaction scores. This world felt alien to her, all polished surfaces and corporate speak. She missed the chaos of a restaurant kitchen, the heat and noise and immediate gratification of creating something people could taste and enjoy. "Miss Clark." The assistant appeared again. "He will see you now." Jason Donovan's office was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of Central Park in the distance. The man himself stood with his back to her, phone pressed to his ear, one hand in the pocket of his perfectly tailored navy suit. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair cut short and neat. When he turned around, his face was all sharp angles and cool assessment, his eyes a striking gray that reminded her of storm clouds. "I understand. Handle it," he said into the phone, then ended the call without saying goodbye. His gaze fixed on her, and she felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. "You are 7 minutes late." Meredith glanced at her phone. It was 8:07. "Your assistant said you were on a call. My meeting was scheduled for 8." He moved to his desk, a massive slab of dark wood that probably cost more than her annual salary. "If you are going to work here, punctuality is not negotiable. If I am going to work here." She felt her temper flare. "I own half this company." "On paper," Jason said, his voice flat. "In reality, you know nothing about running a hotel chain. You have never worked in hospitality management, never overseen a property, never dealt with the kind of decisions we make here every single day. Your uncle may have left you those shares, but that does not make you qualified to use them." The words hit like a slap. My uncle obviously thought differently. Something flickered in Jason's expression, too quick to read. Your uncle was sentimental. It clouded his judgment. "How dare you?" Meredith took a step forward, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Richard built this company from nothing. He was brilliant and kind, and you show up late to our meeting and have the audacity to insult his memory." "I am not insulting his memory. I am stating facts." Jason's jaw was tight, a muscle working beneath the skin. "Richard Donovan was the best partner I could have asked for. But this decision, leaving half the company to someone with zero experience in our industry, it puts everything we built at risk." "Then why did he do it?" Meredith demanded. "If you two were so close, if you understood him so well, why would he write this into his will?" Jason was silent for a long moment, his gaze dropping to the desk. When he looked up again, his expression was carefully neutral. "I have asked myself the same question." The admission surprised her. Meredith took a breath, trying to calm the anger racing through her veins. "Look, I did not ask for this. I loved my uncle and I miss him, and I would give anything to have him back instead of these shares. But this is what he wanted, and I am not going to walk away from it just because you think I am unqualified." "What do you want?" Jason asked bluntly. "Money. I can buy out your shares at a fair market value. You would walk away with enough to never work again if you do not want to." "I do not want your money." The words came out harder than she intended. "I want to understand why my uncle did this, and I want to honor his wishes." Jason studied her for a long moment, and she had the unsettling feeling he was seeing more than she wanted to reveal. Finally, he pulled out a chair across from his desk. "Sit." It was not quite an invitation, but Meredith took the seat. Jason remained standing, moving to the windows with his hands clasped behind his back. "The company is in transition," he said. "We have been planning an expansion into the European market, specifically 3 new properties in Paris, Barcelona, and Rome. It is a $200 million investment, and the financing is contingent on stable leadership. If our investors get nervous about internal conflict or inexperienced ownership, we could lose everything." "So teach me," Meredith said. "That is what the will requires, is it not? We work together for a year. Show me how the business operates. Let me learn." "I do not have time to babysit someone through hospitality 101, Jason said, still not turning around. "I have 3 properties under renovation, 2 union negotiations, and a potential acquisition in Dubai that requires my full attention." "Then I will stay out of your way and figure it out myself." Now he did turn, and there was something almost like dark amusement in his eyes. "You think you can learn to run a billion-dollar company by osmosis?" "I learned to run a kitchen the same way," Meredith shot back. "By showing up, working hard and not being afraid to ask questions or make mistakes. Mistakes in a kitchen might ruin someone's dinner. Mistakes here can cost hundreds of jobs and millions of dollars. Then I guess I had better not make any. She stood, meeting his gaze head-on. I am not going anywhere, Mr. Donovan. You can work with me or against me, but either way I am staying. For the first time, something that might have been respect flickered across his face. Jason, he said, if we are going to be doing this, you might as well call me Jason. Meredith. She held out her hand. His handshake was firm, businesslike, and brief. But she felt the warmth of his palm against hers, the strength in his fingers, and something electric seemed to pass between them before he pulled away. I will have my assistant set you up with an office, Jason said, moving back to his desk. You will need access to our financial systems, property management software, and operational reports. Plan to spend your first week just reading. Understanding where we are before you try to have opinions about where we should go. Thank you, Meredith said, and meant it. Jason nodded once, his attention already shifting to his computer screen. She was clearly dismissed, but as she reached the door, his voice stopped her. Meredith. She turned back. He talked about you, Jason said quietly, still looking at his screen. Richard. He was proud of you. The way you built your career from nothing, the way you never took shortcuts or traded on his name. He said you reminded him of himself when he was young. The words squeezed her heart. Thank you for telling me that. Jason just nodded, and this time when she left, he did not call her back. The office they gave her was 3 doors down from Jason's, smaller but still ridiculously luxurious by her standards, with a view of the city and furniture that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Meredith spent the morning filling out HR paperwork and receiving login credentials from IT. By afternoon, she was drowning in spreadsheets and reports, trying to make sense of occupancy rates and revenue per available room and guest satisfaction metrics. She had always been good with numbers, the kind of mental math required to scale recipes and manage food costs translated well enough. But the sheer scope of the operation was overwhelming. 32 hotels, each with its own staff and budget and challenges. Thousands of employees, hundreds of millions in annual revenue. You look lost. Meredith jerked her head up to find a man standing in her doorway, probably in his late 50s, with silver hair and a kind smile. Sorry, I did not mean to startle you. I am Paul Manning, VP of Operations. Thought I would stop by and introduce myself. Meredith Clark. She stood, grateful for the interruption. And yes, I am extremely lost, Paul laughed. Natural reaction. This place has a learning curve like a cliff face, but you will get the hang of it. Richard used to say the hotel business is just hospitality at scale. You make people feel welcome, give them a clean place to sleep and good food to eat, and treat your staff well. Everything else is just details. That sounds like something my uncle would say. Meredith felt a wave of emotion and pushed it down. Did you work with him long? 20 years, Paul said. Since before they went public. He was one of the best men I ever knew. I am very sorry for your loss. Thank you. She gestured to the papers scattered across her desk. Any chance you could help me understand what I am looking at here? Paul spent the next 2 hours walking her through the basics, explaining how the company was structured and how different departments worked together. He had an easy teaching style, patient and clear, and by the time he left, Meredith felt like she could at least ask intelligent questions instead of just drowning in confusion. Over the next few days, she fell into a routine. She arrived at the office at 7:30, before most of the staff, and spent the first hour reading reports and teaching herself the industry. Jason was always already there when she arrived, his office light on, his silhouette visible through the glass walls as he worked through calls or meetings. They barely spoke. He was always busy, always moving between conference rooms and business trips. When they did cross paths in the hallway or the elevator, he would give her a curt nod and keep walking. She told herself she did not care, that his opinion of her did not matter. But something about his cold dismissal rankled. On Friday afternoon, she was reviewing renovation plans for the Miami property when Jason appeared in her doorway. She looked up in surprise. It was the first time he had come to her office. "There is a site visit to the Chicago hotel on Monday," he said without preamble. "The property is underperforming and we need to assess whether it is a management issue or a facilities issue. You should come." "Really?" Meredith could not keep the surprise from her voice. "You said you wanted to learn," Jason said. "Might as well start with seeing how a property actually operates. Flight leaves at 6 a.m. Be at Teterboro." He was gone before she could respond. Meredith sat back in her chair, her heart beating faster than it should. It was just a business trip. Just a chance to learn the operations side of the company. There was no reason to feel this flutter of anticipation in her stomach. She told herself it was excitement about the learning opportunity. Nothing more. Teterboro Airport was in New Jersey, and Meredith had never flown private before. The plane was smaller than she expected, sleek and cream-colored, with the Donovan Luxury Hotel's logo on the tail. Jason was already on board when she arrived, laptop open, barely glancing up when she took a seat across the aisle. "Coffee." A flight attendant appeared with a warm smile. "Please," Meredith said gratefully. She had been up since 4 to make the drive. The flight was smooth and Jason worked the entire time, his focus absolute. Meredith tried to read through the Chicago property files, but she found her attention drifting to him instead. In the morning light streaming through the windows, she could see faint shadows under his eyes, the tightness around his mouth that spoke of stress. He looked like someone carrying a heavy weight. When they landed in Chicago, a car was waiting to take them directly to the hotel. The Donovan Chicago was a beautiful historic building in the Loop, all Art Deco elegance and classic style. But Meredith could see the issues immediately. The lobby furniture was worn, the carpet showed traffic patterns, and the front desk staff looked harried and understaffed. Jason noticed everything too, his expression growing darker with each detail. He strode to the front desk with Meredith hurrying to keep up. "Is Patrick Shaw available?" he asked the desk clerk, his tone clipped. The young woman's eyes widened. "Mr. Donovan, we were not expecting you until later." "That is the point. Get Patrick." The general manager appeared within minutes, a nervous-looking man in his 40s who shook Jason's hand with visible anxiety. "Mr. Donovan, Miss Clark, welcome. I have conference rooms set up for our meetings." "We will tour the property first," Jason said. "Every floor, every public space, I want to see it all." What followed was one of the most uncomfortable hours Meredith had ever experienced. Jason moved through the hotel like a detective cataloging crimes, pointing out chipped paint, burnt-out light bulbs, stained linens, and a dozen other issues that Patrick Shaw tried to explain away with excuses about budget and staff shortages. "The budget I approved for this property is more than adequate," Jason said coldly as they stood in a guest room with a view of faded wallpaper and a bathroom that needed updating. "What you have is a management problem. You are not maintaining standards, you are not training your staff properly, and you are letting this property deteriorate. With respect, Mr. Donovan, the Chicago market is very competitive," Patrick said. "We are doing our best with the resources we have. Your best is not good enough." Jason turned to face him fully, and Meredith saw the full force of his intensity. "This hotel bears my family's name. Every guest who stays here is trusting us to deliver a certain level of quality. When we fail to do that, we do not just lose money. We lose reputation. We lose trust. And that is not acceptable. What would you like me to do? Patrick asked, his face red. Jason was silent for a moment, and Meredith could see him thinking, weighing options. I am giving you 30 days, he said finally. You will implement a full improvement plan with new training protocols, facility upgrades, and staff reviews. I will send our operations team to help. But if I do not see significant improvement by next month, we will be making leadership changes. Patrick nodded, chastened. Yes, sir. I understand. They spent the rest of the day in meetings with the hotel's department heads, and Meredith watched Jason transform into a teacher. He was tough but fair, asking sharp questions and listening carefully to answers, pointing out problems but also offering solutions. She could see why her uncle had partnered with him. He was brilliant at this, at understanding the complex systems that made a hotel work and finding the pressure points that needed attention. By the time they got back on the plane that evening, Meredith was exhausted. Jason looked tired too, his tie loosened, his expression thoughtful as he stared out the window at the city lights dropping away below them. That was intense, Meredith said, breaking the silence. Jason glanced at her. That was a fairly easy day. Does it bother you? She asked. Having to come down hard on people like that? Of course it bothers me, Jason said, and there was an edge to his voice. Patrick is not a bad person. He is just in over his head, but I cannot let sentiment override business sense. If he cannot turn that property around, he will cost people their jobs when we have to close it. You would close the hotel as a last resort. Jason rubbed his eyes. Chicago is an expensive market. If a property is not performing, it becomes a drain on resources that could be used to support hotels that are succeeding. Sometimes you have to make hard choices. Is that how you see me? Meredith asked quietly. As a hard choice you have to make. Jason's gaze swung to her, sharp and assessing. What do you mean? You could have bought me out, she said. You offered. I turned you down and now you are stuck with me for a year. Do you resent that? He was quiet for a long moment. I do not know you well enough to resent you, he said finally. But yes, I resent the situation. Not because of you personally, because Richard put us both in an impossible position. Why do you think he did it? Meredith asked. Jason shook his head slowly. I have been asking myself that question every day since the will was read. Richard was not impulsive. Everything he did had a reason. But this feels like a puzzle I am missing pieces to. Tell me about him, Meredith said. About working with him. I knew him as my uncle, but I did not really know him as a businessman. Something in Jason's expression softened. He was the best partner anyone could ask for. We met when I was 23, just out of business school, working for an investment firm. He had built his first hotel with money from a construction business he sold, and he needed financing for expansion. Everyone else passed on the deal. They thought he was too old, too inexperienced in hospitality, but I saw something in him, vision, integrity, the kind of drive that does not quit. So you took a chance on him. Best decision I ever made, Jason said. We built this company together from 5 properties to 32. He taught me everything about hospitality, about treating people well, about building something that lasts. And I taught him about finance, about scaling operations, about playing in the big leagues. His voice roughened slightly. He was more than a partner. He was my mentor, my friend. Meredith felt tears prick her eyes. He never talked much about work when we spent time together. He always wanted to hear about my life, my dreams. He would show up at my restaurant and sit at the bar for hours, tasting everything, telling me what he loved. He was proud of you, Jason said. He talked about you constantly. How you had built your career without his help, how talented you were, how determined. He said you got that from your mother. You met my mother, Meredith asked in surprise. Once years ago at a company event. She was kind, funny. Richard adored his sister. Jason's expression was distant. When your parents died, I have never seen him so devastated. He flew out the same day, stayed with you for weeks. When he came back, he was different, more focused on what mattered. He started talking about legacy, about what we leave behind. The pieces clicked together in Meredith's mind. That is when he changed his will. Jason nodded. He never told me what he was changing it to, just said he wanted to make sure the people he loved were taken care of. I assumed he was leaving you money, maybe a property or two, not half the company. Would you have tried to stop him? Meredith asked. Yes, Jason said bluntly. Not because I do not think you deserve it, but because this is not fair to you either. You did not choose this life, this responsibility. You were happy doing what you loved. And now you are stuck here trying to learn an entirely different industry, working with someone who has not made you feel welcome. He looked at her directly. I am sorry for that. You deserved better. The apology surprised her. You have been cold, Meredith admitted, but I understand why. This is your life's work. Having a stranger suddenly own half of it, that has to be terrifying. You are not a stranger, Jason said. You are Richard's niece. That means something. They sat in silence for a while, the plane engines humming around them. Meredith felt something shift between them, a wall coming down at least a little. Jason turned back to his laptop, but his shoulders were less tense, his expression less guarded. Thank you for bringing me today, Meredith said. I learned a lot. Jason glanced at her, and for the first time she saw something that might have been a smile at the corner of his mouth. You are welcome. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow you will start learning the actual work. Over the next few weeks, Meredith threw herself into understanding the business. Jason was true to his word, including her in meetings, explaining strategies, pushing her to think through problems. They developed a routine of morning briefings where they reviewed priorities and challenges, and she found herself looking forward to those sessions more than she wanted to admit. He was still demanding, still quick to point out when her thinking was flawed or her understanding incomplete. But there was respect growing between them now, built on long days and honest conversations and shared commitment to the company Richard had loved. Meredith started to see the man behind the cold exterior. Jason was driven by an almost ferocious need to succeed, to prove something she did not quite understand yet. He worked 16-hour days, traveled constantly, remembered every employee's name and every property's performance metrics. The company was not just his business, it was his identity, but she also saw glimpses of something else. The way he always asked about her weekend, even if it was just in passing. The coffee that appeared on her desk on particularly busy mornings. The way he deflected credit from himself and directed it toward the teams that did the actual work. He was complicated, difficult, and increasingly, Meredith found herself wanting to understand him better. One Friday evening, she was working late, reviewing proposals for the Paris expansion when Jason appeared in her doorway. It was after 9 and the office was nearly empty. You are still here, he said. So are you. Meredith looked up, rubbing her eyes. These proposals are fascinating, but I feel like I am missing something. The numbers look good, the location is perfect, but something feels off. Jason moved into the office, coming around to look at her screen. He was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. What is your instinct telling you? That the timeline is too aggressive, Meredith said. They want to break ground in 6 months and open in 18. But the permitting process in Paris is notoriously slow, and there is no buffer built in for delays. If anything goes wrong, we will be hemorrhaging money while the property sits half-finished. Jason was quiet, studying the proposal. You are right, he said finally. I pushed for the aggressive timeline because our investors want to see quick returns. But you are right. We need more padding. The admission made her look up at him in surprise. You are agreeing with me. I am agreeing with your analysis, Jason said. Is that really so shocking? A little, Meredith admitted. You usually tell me why I am wrong. That is because you usually are, he said, but there was no heat in it. But not today. Good work. The praise warmed her more than it should. Thank you. Jason was still standing close, looking down at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. For a moment, the air between them felt charged, full of possibility. Then he stepped back, breaking the spell. You should go home, he said. It is late. So should you, Meredith said. I have a few more things to finish. Jason moved toward the door, then paused. Are you doing anything tomorrow night? Tomorrow, she tried to think. No, why? There is a charity gala. Normally I would skip it, but it is for a children's hospital Richard supported for years. I should make an appearance, and as co-owner you probably should too. He said it casually, but there was something uncertain in his voice. It is black tie. If you do not have something appropriate, the company can cover it. I can manage, Meredith said, though her mind was already racing through her closet, trying to remember if she owned anything suitable. What time? 7. I will pick you up. He rattled off the address, and she realized he must have it from her employee file. Unless you would prefer to meet there. You picking me up is fine, Meredith said, trying to sound casual despite the flutter in her stomach. It is just business, right? Just business, Jason agreed. But the way he looked at her before he left suggested it might be something more. Meredith went shopping the next morning, using money she probably should not have spent on a dress that made her feel beautiful. It was midnight blue, elegant and simple, with a fitted bodice and a skirt that flowed when she moved. She did her hair in soft waves and kept her makeup understated. When the doorbell rang at 6:45, she grabbed her clutch and opened the door to find Jason standing there in a tuxedo that had definitely been custom-made. He looked devastating, all sharp lines and masculine elegance, his eyes widening slightly when he saw her. You look beautiful, he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her heart skip. You clean up pretty well yourself, Meredith said, aiming for lightness. The gala was held at a historic mansion on Fifth Avenue, all marble columns and glittering chandeliers. They moved through the crowd, Jason introducing her to investors and board members and society figures who smiled politely and asked leading questions about her background. Meredith could feel them assessing her, wondering if she was qualified, if she belonged in this world. Jason stayed close, his hand occasionally touching the small of her back to guide her through the crowd, the contact brief but electric. When they finally found their table for dinner, she was relieved to sit down. You are doing great, Jason said quietly, leaning close so only she could hear. I know this is not your world. It is intimidating, Meredith admitted. Everyone here seems to know exactly who they are and where they fit. I feel like I am playing dress up. You belong here as much as anyone, Jason said firmly. More than most, actually. At least you built something real instead of just inheriting it, says the billionaire, Meredith said with a slight smile. I built the company with your uncle, Jason said. These people, he gestured around the room, half of them never worked a day in their lives. They collect dividends and go to parties and think that makes them important. You actually create things. You make food that brings people joy. That matters more than anything happening in this room. The words touched something deep in her chest. You really mean that? I do not say things I do not mean, Jason said, his gray eyes serious. Dinner was elaborate, course after course of food that Meredith evaluated with her chef's eye, noting what worked and what did not. When the dancing started, Jason surprised her by standing and offering his hand. "I thought you hated these things," Meredith said as he led her onto the floor. "I do," Jason agreed, pulling her into his arms with a confidence that suggested he had done this many times. "But if I have to be here, I might as well enjoy the only good part." They moved together easily, his hand warm on her waist, her palm pressed against his shoulder. This close, she could see the faint scar on his jaw, the individual lashes around his eyes. He smelled like cedar and something crisp she could not name. When he looked down at her, there was an intensity in his gaze that made her feel like they were the only two people in the room. "Meredith," he said, his voice low, "I need to tell you something." "What?" Her heart was racing. "I was wrong about you," Jason said. "When Richard's will was read, I was angry. I felt betrayed, like he had not trusted me to carry on what we built, and I took that out on you. That was not fair." "Jason, let me finish," he said. "These last few weeks, watching you learn, seeing how hard you work, how much you care about doing this right, I have realized something. You are not here to take anything from me. You are here because Richard wanted us to work together, and maybe he knew something we did not." "What do you mean?" Meredith asked. Jason was quiet for a moment, his hand tightening slightly on her waist. "I have spent 10 years building this company. I have made it my entire life. Work, travel, strategy, growth, that is all I think about. Richard used to tell me I needed balance, that I was going to burn out, that there was more to life than occupancy rates and profit margins. But I never listened." "He told me something similar," Meredith said softly. "That I was so focused on proving myself in kitchens that I was forgetting to actually live. That I needed to take risks, try new things, let people in." Jason smiled slightly. He was annoyingly wise. "So what are you saying?" Meredith asked, searching his face. "I am saying maybe he brought us together for a reason," Jason said. "Not just for the company, but for each other." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Meredith felt like she was standing on the edge of something significant, something that could change everything. "I do not want to complicate things," she said carefully. "We work together. We own a company together. If we started something and it did not work out, it would be a disaster," Jason finished. "I know, believe me, I have thought through every reason why this is a terrible idea. But I cannot stop thinking about you, and I do not want to anymore." His honesty took her breath away. "I think about you too," Meredith admitted, "more than I should, more than is probably smart." "So where does that leave us?" Jason asked. Meredith looked up at him, at this complicated, driven, brilliant man who had somehow become important to her. "I do not know," she said honestly, "but I would like to find out." Jason's smile was slow and genuine, transforming his face into something younger and lighter. "That is the best news I have heard in a very long time." They danced until the song ended, and then threw another one, neither of them wanting to break apart. When they finally left the gala, Jason's hand found hers in the car, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Can I take you to dinner tomorrow?" he asked. "A real date, not a business obligation." "I would like that," Meredith said, squeezing his hand. "As long as you let me pick the restaurant, I have professional standards." Jason laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Deal." He walked her to her apartment door, and they stood there awkwardly for a moment like teenagers. "I am not going to kiss you," Jason said. "Not tonight. When I do, I want you to be absolutely sure it is what you want. No champagne, no romantic settings, just us making a choice with clear heads." Meredith felt disappointed and charmed in equal measure. "That is very principled of you." "I am trying to do this right," Jason said. "You are too important to mess up." She reached up and touched his cheek, feeling the slight stubble there. "Good night, Jason." "Good night, Meredith." She watched him walk away, her heart full of possibility. Their first real date was at a small Italian place in the village, the kind of neighborhood restaurant with checkered tablecloths and wine in cheap glasses and food that was absolutely spectacular. Meredith had worked there briefly as a line cook years ago, and the owner greeted her with enthusiastic hugs before showing them to a quiet corner table. "This is perfect," Jason said, looking around at the simple warmth of the place. "Much better than another formal dinner." They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. Jason told her about growing up in Connecticut, the son of an accountant and a teacher, working his way through business school, the leap of faith that led to partnering with Richard. Meredith shared stories from her culinary training, the brutal kitchen she had survived, the dream of someday having her own restaurant. "Why did you not?" Jason asked. "Open your own place." "Money mainly," Meredith said. "And fear, if I am being honest. It is such a huge risk. Most restaurants fail in the first year. I kept telling myself I needed more experience, more savings, more of everything. And then my uncle got sick and everything else seemed less important." "What would it look like?" Jason asked. "Your restaurant." Meredith closed her eyes, letting herself imagine it fully. Small, maybe 40 seats, seasonal menu that changes constantly based on what is fresh and beautiful, not trying to be fancy, just serving food that makes people happy. A place where regulars feel like family and newcomers feel welcome. She opened her eyes to find Jason watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "It is a silly dream." "It is not silly," Jason said firmly. "It is specific and thoughtful and completely achievable. You know that, right? You have the skills. And now you have the capital." "The shares," Meredith said slowly. "Eventually, yes. Even before that, I could help you find investors, set up a business plan." Jason leaned forward. "I know you did not ask for my help, but I want to support your dreams, Meredith, the same way Richard did." She felt emotion tighten her throat. "Why?" "Because you make me want to think bigger," Jason said simply. "I have spent so long focused on growth and strategy that I forgot what we are actually building. It is not about revenue projections. It is about creating places where people make memories, where they celebrate and connect and feel cared for. You understand that instinctively, and I want to learn from you." "I want to learn from you too," Meredith said. "You have built something incredible. The discipline, the systems, the way you can see the whole picture and the tiny details at once. That is remarkable." "So we teach each other," Jason said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Partners in every sense." "Partners," Meredith agreed, lacing her fingers through his. When they left the restaurant, Jason pulled her close as they walked through the quiet streets, and this time when he kissed her under the streetlights, it was with clear intention and mutual desire, and it felt like coming home. The next few months were a whirlwind of balancing their growing relationship with the demands of running the company. They were careful at the office, maintaining professionalism, but everyone could probably sense the shift between them. The cold distance had been replaced by easy collaboration, finishing each other's thoughts in meetings, laughing at private jokes. The Paris expansion moved forward with the adjusted timeline Meredith had suggested, and it proved to be the right call when permitting delays hit exactly as she had predicted. The Chicago hotel turned around under new management, guest satisfaction scores climbing steadily. Jason started delegating more, trusting his team to handle day-to-day operations while he focused on long-term strategy, and Meredith thrived. She discovered she had a knack for the business side of hospitality, her chef's understanding of what made a guest experience special translating well to hotel operations. She started spending time at different properties, working with restaurant teams, overhauling menus, training staff. Jason had been right. She did belong in this world, just not in the way either of them had expected. 6 months into their relationship, Jason took her to meet his parents at their home in Greenwich. His mother was warm and immediate, pulling Meredith into a hug and peppering her with questions about her cooking. His father was more reserved, but she could see the intelligence in his eyes, the way he assessed her carefully. Over dinner, his mother told embarrassing childhood stories while Jason groaned in mock horror, and Meredith felt accepted in a way she had not experienced since her own parents died. When they were leaving, Jason's father pulled her aside. "He is different with you," he said quietly. "Lighter. Jason has always been so driven, so serious, but I can see him relaxing, enjoying life. That is because of you. Thank you for that." The words meant more than Meredith could express. "He has changed my life too," she said honestly, "in the best ways." As they drove back to the city, Jason reached over and took her hand. "They loved you, obviously." "Your mother is wonderful," Meredith said. "I can see where you get your work ethic from your dad." "And my tendency to overthink everything," Jason said wryly. "It is a mixed blessing." "I like the way you think," Meredith said. "Even when it drives me crazy," Jason laughed. "The feeling is entirely mutual." They spent weekends exploring the city, trying new restaurants, visiting museums, doing all the normal relationship things that both of them had neglected for years. Jason taught her to appreciate opera, though she still thought it was dramatically over the top. She introduced him to the chaos of farmers' markets and the joy of cooking together in her tiny apartment kitchen. "You are a terrible sous chef," she informed him one Sunday morning as he massacred an attempt at dicing onions. "I have other skills," Jason protested, pulling her away from the stove to kiss her thoroughly. "Admit it, I am good at some things." "Mediocre at best," Meredith teased, kissing him back. "But I suppose I will keep you around," he grinned against her mouth. "Lucky me." When the year anniversary of Richard's death approached, they both felt it. Jason became quieter, more withdrawn, throwing himself into work with renewed intensity. Meredith found herself crying at unexpected moments, grief hitting her in waves. "I miss him," she said one night as they sat in Jason's apartment overlooking Central Park. "It does not get easier, does it?" "No," Jason said, pulling her close. "But you learn to carry it differently. Richard would not want us to be sad. He would want us to celebrate what we are building together." "I wish he could see us," Meredith said. "See that his crazy plan actually worked." Jason was quiet for a long moment. "I think he knew it would. Richard was never impulsive, remember. He brought us together because he saw something we could not see ourselves, that we would be better together than apart, in business and in life." "He was right," Meredith said softly. "He usually was," Jason agreed. Annoying habit of his. On the actual anniversary, they visited Richard's grave together, bringing flowers and standing in comfortable silence. Meredith talked to him like he was there, telling him about the company, about Jason, about how grateful she was for the gift he had given her even though it had terrified her at first. "I hope we are making you proud," she said finally, her voice breaking. "I hope you know how much we loved you." Jason's arm tightened around her shoulders, and when she looked up, there were tears on his face too. They held each other as the sun set, grieving together but not alone, and somehow that made all the difference. The mandatory year of working together came and went without fanfare. They were deep into planning the Barcelona property launch, and neither of them thought to mark the date until Paul Manning mentioned it in passing during a meeting. "Has it really been a year?" Meredith asked in surprise. 14 months, actually," Paul said. "Congratulations on making it work. A lot of people did not think you would." After the meeting, Jason found her in her office. "We should probably talk about what happens now." "What do you mean?" Meredith asked, though she knew. The will's requirements have been fulfilled, Jason said. You are free to sell your shares if you want. No obligations. You want me to sell? Meredith asked carefully. God, no, Jason said immediately. But I want you to have the choice. Really have it without pressure or expectations. This is your life, Meredith. You should get to decide what you